Hello, and welcome to That One Idea, a podcast series chronicling early stage founder journeys brought to you by WaterBridge Ventures. Through this podcast series, we hope to bring out the founder moments and journeys that lead them to starting up. We highlight the humans behind the founders as they blitz through the 0 to 1 scale journey and transition their ideas into scale-worthy businesses. These conversations reveal the unique spirit and talent of these incredible founders as they share their vision of who they are and what they're building.
This is Ashish Jain in conversation with Sankalp, Mohit and Nitin, co-founders of Paavan. As young IIT Delhi graduates, they are leaning upon thousands of years of well-researched Indian knowledge systems to extract valuable lessons on how to solve our modern day-to-day problems and lead a better life. Hello Sankalp, Mohit and Nitin, and welcome to this podcast. All of you looking super charged up and hopefully excited too, correct?
Definitely, Ashish. We're super excited to be here, and thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Glad to be here, Ashish. Super excited.
Chalo, great. So let's start. So Sankalp and Mohit, you are batchmates, and Nitin, you are a year junior. How has the evolution been from being college friends to being co-founders?
I think, Ashish, I have known Mohit for quite some time now. I interacted with Mohit first in my third year, and I was looking for some ideas where we could start up. And fortunately, we zeroed in on something called Runner. So Mohit and I, we actually started a business together in our final year, which is similar to Dunzo, what we see today. So we ran that business for almost a year, raised a small round, scaled our operations to 70 to 100 orders a day. And then we were in the market to raise funds and realized that we are still in college. And there was definitely some lack of experience also, but also it was getting difficult for us to raise capital at that point in time. And while being in college, we decided that it was a great experience, learning experience, and we got a first-hand experience of actually seeing how to run a business, how to think of running a business as a whole. So we decided that maybe it's time for us to take a step back and maybe get more experience and work with more seasoned founders to see how a business is built, and then maybe take another jab at entrepreneurship maybe slightly later in our life. So then post Mohit went ahead and started working with India Question, which is an early stage venture capital fund. I joined an early stage startup called MyHQ, which was in the business of co-working spaces. And I think Sankalp and Mohit are batchmen, so Sankalp can tell you more about his story. I knew Sankalp back in college, but it was more like we used to discuss when I went to Mohit's hostel for discussing the business. Then I met Sankalp and we had a few interactions at that point in time. So it was more like an acquaintance. We knew each other, but Mohit and Sankalp were more close.
So Mohit and Sankalp, did you rag Nitin into joining Paavan?
Almost, Ashish.
Okay.
But yeah, Ashish, I think the good thing is that given that, Mohit and I both were in the same hostel starting our first years and being together for 4 years in the same thing, we knew each other inside out, and the comfort that we have in terms of sharing of thoughts and ideas, that is a real plus point for us while we're building the business together. And it definitely saves a lot of time in the initial phases of the business when you get to know each other. So that process was was made much simpler for us. So that helped for the benefit of the business as well.
Yeah. Mohit, anything from you?
Yes. And then one thing we realized that being co-founders is very important. Like, you have to know somebody. It's not just the quality that matters. Along with quality, you have to have trust in the person that he will stay with you for the long term, will swim tides, whether in the positive or in the hard times. So all of those things, that comfort came because we have a long history of knowing each other, Nitin and Sank. Though they independently did not knew each other, but I was kind of an anchor in between. Like, we used to interact with Sankalp and ideas, and the same idea I used to pitch with Nitin also. So that is where we all clubbed together and find out that this is a place, this is an entity that we all are very bullish about, and we love to go and build something there.
So when friends start working together, things can really go positive, they can go negative as well. But like, knowing each other too well, is that a plus, or does it also have a downside? Like, you become too predictable, okay, this is how this guy is going to react or respond, and therefore you just don't bring that up.
So, Ashish, I think obviously there's a plus point there. And as cliche as it sounds, being co-founders running a business together is actually like marriage. I personally spend more time with them than with my wife, right? Honestly. So, and there's another thing that while running a business, as obviously it's a business, so there would definitely be ups and downs. So there are a lot of things, there are a lot of emotions that we founders have to go together. And these are necessarily days or emotions that we might or might not be able to share with us, maybe our friends or even family. So to have that bonding, to know each other for that long, it makes it slightly easier for us to share that feeling, to go through that ups and downs and still maybe push each other when the chips are down. So that becomes very important. What is most important between the founders, I think, is to understand each other. That frequency match is very important, and also a mutual respect and the right mix of collaboration along with freedom. So I think that becomes very easy when you know the person for the person who they are, right? And from a skill set standpoint, I think the skills, we've done a lot of consulting prep in our colleges. So there's a word called MISI, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. So I think for startup founders, I think that is very important. The skills should be MISI.
So, three young people graduating from IIT Delhi and getting associated with extracting learnings from ancient wisdom does not seem too obvious. What attracted you towards this space and convinced that a business can be built on the top?
That's very interesting, Ashish. So I believe that, coming especially from an engineering background, we've always been trained to think in terms of questioning everything that's happening around you. And those questions is what led us here. And I believe that anyone who's actually observing things in nature would really, really find the space of ancient knowledge extremely interesting, given it is purely scientific. The knowledge has been gathered over centuries in our culture, and that is what has made it into the way of life that we are now exploring and trying to take it to the people and take it to the masses. So when we actually figured that there are so many things in our ancient knowledge that not only relates to, say, spirituality or is mystical, but these are things that can actually be applied in our day-to-day lives, and something that people deal with on a regular basis. It is actually very helpful for them to learn these things and apply to their day-to-day activities, be it eating, be it your relationships, be it self-development, be it your business or careers that you're working towards. So the business idea that we thought about essentially is bringing out these values and becoming a companion for people and translating this knowledge, which seems very distant for our generation right now, and making it extremely usable and something that's very easy to follow for people.
Okay. And Mohit, how do you see this? How do you what are your thoughts?
So these solutions that we talk about are actually primarily derived from our human behavior, something that we feel day to day. So these are not something which are force fitted into your behavior. It is something, the feelings are very natural. When I see a man in pain, and the feeling of sadness that comes into my mind is what our scriptures also talk about. So all the solutions that we are trying to bring out will actually revolve around the human natural behaviors and instincts, and these are something what makes it very effective and sustainable, so that it is very easy for people to follow and bring it into their life.
Yeah, that's true. And Nitin, do you think, like, are there any past life experiences for the three of you which make you naturally attracted towards this space, or how do you relate to this space?
So, Ashish, for me, I come from a super religious Banya family, right? So I have seen these experience more from the religious practices standpoint happening in my family. So as I grew up, I joined college, I started questioning everything. And then I started realizing that the practices that I've seen all my life during my childhood, what is the real essence, the real idea behind it? If we remove the practices part of it, what is the science behind it, right? Say, for example, people put tikas on their mind, on their face, on their head, right? So I used to question that, why do you put this? What is the significance of this? And then when you dive deeper, you understand that in earlier days, people used to put chandan tikas, right? And it actually calms your chakra, which is present between your forehead, which keeps your body less stressed and more focused. So these are things I think that has helped me. For me personally, from a lifestyle standpoint, one thing that has really helped me is the way I treat food and diet, and what I used to treat it earlier and how I see it today, right? Like before, I used to combine a lot of food items, right? So maybe I used to have tea with my lunch or dinner, or maybe if I am having curd, I also used to have tea with it. And then when I started reading more about it from an Ayurvedic standpoint, how does different food items impact your body, and what are the items that you should take that impact you? So it really helped me, and it really solved a lot of issues that I used to have from a gut or a diet standpoint. Then I realized that, oh, all of this has already been written there, right? And it is just a matter of time, and it is just on us that do we want to dive deep and actually see that how can we apply this in the real life.
Okay, but people often confuse ancient Indian text with just spirituality. What do you guys think is the difference, and what is the true expanse of the ancient Indian text? How well researched is this text, and does it provide a solid foundation for a potentially large business?
Right. So Ashish, I think the first thing which people confuse about is that spirituality is extremely mystical. It is something that exists in either stories or it relates to some superpowers. But when we look at it closely, a very simple example in real life, for example, is that when we study physics, the first thing that we learn is the electron model, right? That one revolves around the proton, and eventually as we progress, we come to quantum models. Now, suppose if we do not accept the first bit that the standard model existed, we would never be able to get to the next part of it, which is the actual shapes of the energy levels. So there is a little conviction that is needed to go forward. And again, that conviction is not something that is out of the world. A very simple example is that, say, our texts say that Vigraha, which is a very core concept in majority of the philosophies, be it Yoga Sutras or be it Jain philosophy, which essentially means minimalism or not gathering. Now, everyone in the modern world has also started following, right? Because we know that as and when we gather more and more things, our greed starts growing. There is a lot of effort that is also required to maintain the things that we possess. And it also leads to a lot of mental stress issues. But these are things that have been present in the scriptures for centuries, and people actually followed that lifestyle. So if you look at these smaller principles, we actually understand that these were things that are essential to your being, essential to the calmness or stability of your mind, your health, and not just for yourself, it also helps build a very sustainable society around you. So when we actually enter these, we start to understand all the scientific experiences, all the detailing that has been done in all aspects. To quote another example, as Nitin was mentioning, in terms of Ayurveda, if you look at the depth at which experiments have been done, you will find that, the time for which you boil water actually creates different properties and can have different impacts on your body. So water heated for 10 minutes treats a different disease. Water heated for 30 minutes treats a completely different disease. And these are things that you actually experiment and you can see. So this is not mysticism, or this is not something that has just been written out of the blue. These are experiments that have been done over ages and ages. And it's so much more deeper than a lot of the things that we currently know through science. And even about science, if we talk, 96% of the universe is still unknown, right? We're just aware of the 4% that is visible to us. The rest of it is dark matter, dark energy. And modern and the greatest scientists have accepted this fact. So as Albert Einstein says, that the basic laws of universe are very simple, but we're not able to perceive them because our senses are limited. So we just need to accept the fact that we're not capable of infinite perception as yet. So there's no harm in accepting things and waiting for things to be known in time. So I would just suggest that, we have to keep our thoughts open, our perspective should be open, and we actually have to be scientific enough to be able to understand these texts and scriptures.
And when you know, at times what happens, and Nitin and Mohit, you can chime into this as well, that, theoretically this, what Sankalp is saying is so valid, so rational, but when it comes to building, to use this as a startup idea and to go ahead and put all your energies and time in building a business on top of this, how do these two things combine? Because, one business is actually run on solid commercial concepts. And what you guys are doing, at times people may say, no, it is sounding too purist, but it cannot be a business.
So one thing that we can all agree on is that we all have problems, right? Big or small. And all our lives, we have been looking for solutions to these problems. At one end, there's zero cost solution, say, available from our immediate friends and family, right? We reach out and we always have that intellectual friend or maybe that super experienced uncle that we can discuss our problems with. But the problem with that is that it is still limited and it is less reliable because most of it is experience driven. Then at the other end of the spectrum, there's very expert-led solutions, say psychologists, right? But the problem with it is they are expensive, they are inaccessible. And then there are a lot of spiritual gurus and motivational speakers who are effectively doing the same thing, helping us steer our life in the right direction. Right. And another important thing that we should look at is that the problems do not have to be significant. A lot of smaller problems can impact our life negatively, and with time they can compound to become bigger problems, right? So there's enough evidence that there is problems in the society and intervention is required at the right time. Right. Now, let's look at how are people looking for these solutions and where are they looking for these solutions. So apart from the offline channel, the major source for, say, looking at solutions or wisdom related to self-improvement or maybe life or relationship is YouTube. Okay. And YouTube, like any other industry, because this is something which is so huge and impacts the life of almost everybody. So YouTube is exactly not made for this. And there needs to be a verticalization in this space. And we have enough and more examples from other industry where this has happened, say, be in terms of edtech or education, where Vedantu and say physics wala have maybe they have spent out of YouTube and created a different product, a different company just to address this problem. Then there's a loco in gaming. So because the platform, YouTube as a platform is not meant for this, so a verticalization is required in this space. There are a lot of problems with YouTube as a channel. So the platform is horizontal and it is not optimized for this particular problem or category. And YouTube in general is optimized for clicks and views. So there's a lot of clickbaitiness on the platform and it is not meant for surfacing the right solution or the effective solution which can satisfy the needs of the users. Being a UGC platform, there are no checks and balances and there's no credibility on the information that is being shared. And because we are dealing with real people and real problems that can impact their lives, so we cannot go wrong at such places. And if we look at it, not just for, there are a lot of people who have deep insights and knowledge of ancient wisdom and how can it impact the life of people in a positive way. And even for them, YouTube is not a very good platform, right? They are competing with the larger categories like entertainment, comedy, fashion, lifestyle. And at the same time, there are not enough monetization opportunities for it. So there is definitely a need for a product like Paavan, which can act as a guide of sort, helping people at every step in their life, no matter how big or how small the problem is. And if a platform who can use this ancient wisdom, which is a very sustainable and a long lasting way of living life, the Bharatiya way of life, I think the wisdom rooted there is something that can impact our life and is something which can in harmony with, say, there's no word like collateral damage in Indic philosophy, right? Everything is in harmony with one another. So that knowledge, I think we are very bullish and we're very confident that that is the right way to live life, and a product or a solution like Paavan is needed, especially in the modern times where the problems have become even more complex. Say there's a lot of news going around related to layoffs, right? And people are very vulnerable and there's a lot of uncertainty floating around. So whom do we discuss these problems with, right? And what is the solution? We cannot discuss this with our friends and family because maybe they are not in that situation. They cannot understand that. And at the same time, it is not that big a problem that we go to a psychologist and discuss this with. So we want Paavan to become a platform which can address all of these issues, smaller issues that pop up as we navigate through life.
And Sankalp then made an interesting point around verticalization of YouTube and or unbundling of YouTube. And as he mentioned, that a lot of different categories have unbundled, whether it is education, entertainment, whether you look at likes of Netflix, etc., or Spotify. All of these are examples of unbundling of YouTube and verticalization. So, how do you think this verticalization is going to help build Paavan?
You made a very interesting point. Like, given why do we need to unbundle YouTube? And like YouTube has been there for a long time now, and it in fact covered a lot of categories which can practically exist. So that is the beauty and that is the opportunity that we see. So with the help of YouTube, what has enabled in the society is now everybody who has a problem, they first go to YouTube, find out their solutions, have a first touch with the problem itself. But the problem that comes along is, given it's a UGC platform, the solution which is provided on YouTube may not suffice their needs. So that is where we come into picture, that anybody who has a problem, we want to become a go-to platform for them. Instead of finding solutions on YouTube, they can come onto Paavan, because the promise that we provide, that it's a expert-led problem platform. The solutions that you will find have been tried and tested and is backed by seasoned professionals, and not somebody who is just there to get some views and make money. So this is, we believe that unbundling point in time becomes super critical, because YouTube as a platform has now exploded, has become the first touch point for a lot of people. And now making a more sophisticated problems dedicated to the needs of the people is an important step.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So who do you think is your TG, and why do you think that they will relate to the content that your platform is serving?
So, Ashish, the kind of solution that we are giving or the kind of problem that we want to solve, I think it is applicable for people across ages and cultural backgrounds, right? The moment you reach a point in your life where your problem become your own, and there's nobody else looking out for you or maybe in a position to solve those problems, I think our platform will become valid for everybody who falls in that category, right? But right now, because we are building a business, we need to have a more focused approach. So we're building the platform right now specifically for people in the age group of 21 to 35 who mostly live in the top 100, 150 cities in India. The reason for that is that we believe that this is the age group when people start living a life of their own, and the volatility in life starts creeping in, right? Amidst work, relationships, family, career, jobs, smaller lifestyle problems start appearing, which, if not addressed at the right time, can lead to more adverse results, right? The reason of them choosing us is because we understand that one size fits all will not work. Every person is different and their problems are very different. So taking a very platform approach, which is driven by experts, will help us have enough and more volume in terms of the solutions that are available, and also the topics that we can cover as a platform, so that Paavan becomes very personalized and customized for the needs of the users. One user can have very smaller problems related to self-improvement, and we have enough and more creators who can tackle that, right? And then we can have another creator who is expert at parenting, who can help you solve issues that you face with your child. Or maybe there are another experts who can help you solve issues related to relationships. So it becomes more contextual for the user, which is not there on a generic horizontal platform like YouTube. Because we are taking the ancient wisdom, but one thing we are very particular about, we question it in the modern context, right? Because we as a society, we have changed in the last few hundreds of years, right? So we need to understand that we don't have to rely purely on the words, but what we want to focus on is the real essence behind the wisdom or the knowledge that has been written in our scriptures or has been there in our lifestyle, and question that in the modern context, how it can help us for our modern problems and in the modern setup, right? And then create frameworks out of it and give it to people. So that scientific approach, that relevancy or modernity is something which is there in our solution, which makes it very appealing, or which will make it very appealing for people who are treating Paavan as a platform to solve their lifestyle issues.
Yeah, great. So if you look at the entire space, I know it is a common refrain that this space, even though it looks sizable, people think that it is hard to build when you are trying to build a business, and even harder to monetize. So do you guys actually agree with this? And at what stage of business do you think it will be sensible to start monetizing?
Ashish, that's an interesting question. We've been asked this question a lot of times, right? And we have a very different take at this. So we are very positive on monetization. Monetization has always been a focus for us. done a lot of experiments in the business just to test it out, right? And we honestly don't think that monetization would be a challenge. Our take on India as a society is it's a very value-driven society. People are happy paying money the moment they realize there's some value in it. And this value should not be a forced value. It should be an inherent, genuine value that people see in the product. And one thing right now is that people treat these smaller lifestyle issues have not maybe become something which forces them to pay. If you're facing if you have a big, say, a disease, or if you have a big problem, you don't mind spending lakhs and lakhs rupees in, say, hospitals and in doctor consultations, right? The only thing that needs to change is that the perception that even these smaller lifestyle issues are important and worth solving for. I think that mindset is very important, and it is changing. It is happening with time, especially for people in tier 1, tier 2 cities, younger people. They have started acknowledging this. There was a WHO report which says that one in every 7 Indian will have mental health problems. The enrollments in psychology departments in DU has increased almost 100% after COVID. So people have started realizing that these smaller issues can impact your life, and it is worth solving at the right time. The second thing is that the larger question for us is, when should we start monetization? So right now the focus for the business is to create that value and to test it out on a big enough user base that, yes, am I creating enough value for significantly large number of people in India? Once we have more conviction around that, I think go very heavy on monetization. Some of the monetization revenues would be, say, pay-per-view courses or one-on-one consultations or slightly larger programs.
And since this is a very large space and it kind of impacts everyone, it is not about that this knowledge that you guys are extracting and contextualizing in the modern world, it doesn't stop at India. It is, the problems are universal problems. So what is your long-term roadmap? Do you think that these things can be extended beyond India? And if yes, then which will be the immediate markets or societies which can relate to this?
Okay. So Ashish, I think that's a very interesting question. And one thing that we are very particular about is that we are building Paavan not just for India, but for the world. And we strongly believe that the solutions are sustainable, have a long-lasting result. And the Bharatiya way of life, the real essence of the Bharatiya way of life is, I think, one of the best ways to live life. And we can see enough and more data that the West has already started adopting this, be it in terms of yoga, meditation, intermittent fasting, sattvic food, minimal living, as Sankalp said, right? And all of these practices have originated in India and are at the core of who we are, right? Plus, there's another perception that we want to tackle. So if you see closely, there's an increasing trend that our practices go to the West, gets repackaged, comes back, and then we start adopting it. Means yoga became yoga, dhyan became meditation, and the list goes on, right? We want to change this perception and lead from the front. And it is now time that we become more comfortable in our skin and proudly embrace what has always been ours, right? So we definitely want to build this platform from India using the wisdom of India, but for the world. So that's for sure. The second thing is in terms of our aspirations, we want to make Paavan big enough. We want to maybe impact the lives of 100, 200 million people in the next 4, 5 years, 6 years. We want a platform to be relevant for all age groups, for problems throughout the spectrum in terms of the severity. If you have trouble sleeping, Paavan can help. If work gets overwhelming, Paavan can help. If you want to focus on health, we have programs for that as well. If you want to know how to choose your best career, I think we can help you with that as well. So, and if you want to dive deeper into all of this, we will have a lot of one-on-one consultation with experts or life coaches, or you can enroll for our longer experiential programs in our offline centers. So I think that's the vision for the company, that we want to be omnipresent. We want to impact. If we think that we can add value in your workspace, then we'll have a B2B angle to the business, right? If we think we can add value to your personal life, we will definitely do this via the Paavan app. So I think that's largely what the vision for the business is, and how we look at Paavan on a longer horizon.
Yeah, so you make an interesting point around, before Haldi Ka Doodh goes to West, gets rebranded as, turmeric mocha or whatever, and comes back to India and people really start adopting it. It is better that you start consuming Haldi Ka Doodh, correct?
So there's no reason for us to reach a point that the West has reached in their life cycle of a society and then come back to things which we already know are good and can help you solve all the problems before, I think, can tackle them beforehand.
So how do you define, although Nitin has touched upon this briefly, but how do you define scale for Paavan and where do you see it in 2030?
So, Ashish, for us, scale, the first thing that we need to tackle essentially is the online presence, given that we have to reach everyone, and that's the fastest and the easiest way. And given all the solutions, especially post COVID, have even the solutions that required a physical presence have been converted into digital experiences, thereby expanding the reach, making it easily accessible to everyone. So we believe that by 2030, we at least have to be at a scale of around 150 to 200 million MAUs, purely in terms of numbers. In terms of experience, we also believe that in addition to the online presence, we also have to be present physically, because despite having all these experiences or being able to interact with these online, the physical experience still needs to be there, because we believe that a lot of it actually comes in terms of community. Now, again, given the world we are in, given the technological advancements that are happening with AR and VR coming in picture, we might have a very different picture of what we mean by a physical presence or having a community together. But essentially, the core of the experience needs to be integrated. And that is what we see, not just in India, but we want that connection to be across the globe. Because as we discussed earlier also, this information, this knowledge that we want to present to people is universal. And it is for the benefit of the entire society, not just for individuals. So that is how we look at it. And even in terms of the experiences, as Nitin was just saying, that it does not need to be limited to just one particular problem or only to problems, so to say. Even if you do not have any problems and you just want to keep your general well-being up, you want to keep your mindset positive, you're free to do that on a regular basis, where you have Paavan as a companion with you. Be it, say, if you want to go for a walk, we have guides that help you do that. Be it through running shoes, if you want to meditate, you have devices, maybe physical devices that help you do that. You have a earpod with a personalized companion guiding you through that meditative process for you. So this is the vision that we have in terms of complete integration in the online and offline worlds.
No, that's very ambitious and congratulations. So Mohit, last question for each one of you. So you are doing a lot of research. You're going to lot of institutes in trying to identify the right people who can generate the type of expert advice that is required on the platform. So how do you do that, and what has your experience been so far?
Great question. Ashish, this is a very tricky problem when we say that we are an expert-led problem. So the first filters that you can always have is degrees, but then this is also not something which is taught in the school as a course. So the process that we do is that we have an in-house team which vets each and every expert that comes onto the platform. And when I say vetting, they just not need to tell me 100 shloks of Gita. They have to be, so they have to have that great depth of understanding that what the slok means in the present world. So this is the level of detailing that we work out with the experts. So, and that is where we believe the number of experts onto the platform will always be a handful, but they would be very in depth when it comes to the knowledge of the scriptures, their application, and how can that transforms in the present world. So one important thing that we are focusing right now is, given we are in India, people do have a soft corner when it comes to Indian knowledge systems. But that soft corner will not only get into business. When it comes to business, the key thing that we have to keep in mind is the problem solving effectiveness. Unless until people find those solutions effective, unless until they are able to overcome their problems in some form, the affinity or the stickiness of the problem will always remain in question. So these are a few factors that we always keep in mind, keep in check whenever we talk to experts, that how well they understand the meaning of the scriptures, the Indian values that they have, and are they experienced enough in solving those problems, and they have a lot of years when it under their belly when it comes to problem solving. And the methodology that we track about the product effectiveness is a factor that we keep in mind.
Yeah, great. No, I understand it. To contextualize to the modern context is not an easy problem, and to find experts who can actually bridge this gap, and put a modern context on top of whatever the text is saying. That is super, super critical. So, Nitin, in terms of marketing, developing a large demand funnel, what are your efforts? Because you guys have a very defined TG to begin with, 21 to 35. So, how are you, from purely marketing perspective, trying to build strong hooks with your TG?
So from an acquisition standpoint, the first thing that any brand does is a digital acquisition, right? Focusing on paid acquisition via digital channels. So that has already been happening in the company. And because we've done that for so long, so we know how to acquire users digitally, how to optimize those channels. So we've done that. Parallelly, what we've done as a marketer, one thing that we focus a lot on is how do we build organic channels or acquisition channels that can get users in the system without spending money. That is one. And can I increase the volume of user acquisition, that every touch point that I open or every initiative that I open can help me acquire users in bulk. So these are two focus areas for us in the company. Building organic funnels, like going very heavy on content, SEO in terms of acquiring users and maybe capturing them at different touch points. So we are an app-based business, but how do we capture users? How showing this intent on a web platform, right? How do we do that? Going very aggressive on social media, building a community around it, giving them content, giving them a flavor of the solution that we are offering on the app, right? So that's one channel. The second channel is how can we tap into offline channels or maybe partnerships that can help us in acquiring users in bulk. So a couple of ideas there are using our creators to acquire users, because a lot of people follow them on day-to-day basis. Though if we can use them to acquire users on the app is one thing that we're focusing on. Then the second thing is that we're doing a lot of B2B partnerships with brands as well as startups and corporates, that if we can go to them and tell them and help their employees maybe improve some part of the work life, right? So that is something that we are also focusing on. So these are primarily, apart from paid digital channels, these are two things that we're building a strong pipeline.
And just mentioned that, in his vision, 200 million plus kind of a MAU. From your perspective, where do you see that? Do you think that's a very audacious target? Or do you think that that is something that is achievable?
I think it is purely realistic and it is definitely achievable, right? And we have enough and more data already in the startup ecosystem of brands achieving this. Say, for example, ShareChat, last I checked, ShareChat plus Moj combined have MAUs on north of 200 million and 50 million DAUs. So I don't think it is unachievable. It is realistic and we can definitely achieve it, given we are able to crack all the monetization avenues properly. And as there's a quote in Bhagavad Gita, कि आपका मन ही आपकी मर्यादा है, right? So I think we strongly believe on that we are what we think. And I think as entrepreneurs, we always have to aim at the stars and then only will be able to achieve the moon, right? So I think that's definitely we have to be very aggressive in our approach. And how will things pan out in the future? We don't know. But I think what we are confident on is that we are prepared. And I think we have those right skill sets and we would be able to build those skills internally in the company, which can help us achieve that. But it is audacious, but it's not unachievable. We can definitely achieve it.
So Sankalp, last question for you. In terms of product, because your TG is the TG which is super sharp, very, very young TG, and they demand the best, simply the best. So from a product perspective, what are you doing to ensure that your TG actually interacts with the platform and finds it super sleek and super usable and very contemporary?
Right, Ashish, I think this is a very important piece of the experience, especially because the things that we want to offer to our users is something that we want to make them go happy. So for us, a happy user is much more valuable than a returning user. So what we need to understand essentially are various aspects of the solution that we're trying to build. So one is the type of interaction that the creator or the expert has with the user, and breaking that down into usable interactive experiences. So we're working to understand what are the methods that these experts deal with and what are the experiences and behaviors that we want to integrate with the users, so as to be able to give a completely native experience and immersive experience to the user. So that is one strong research that we constantly do with our experts. The other thing is to be able to identify the touch points where users are actually facing issues in terms of either executing or generally in their life, so that when we know that, okay, while I talk to someone, that is the point when I actually, face some issues, or these are triggers that, for my anger, for example. So I need to be able to monitor those and prepare the user into the life cycle where I am able to interact with them at the right touch points, because that becomes very important. And a lot of this information and the exercises based on reaffirmations, on reiterations and reinforcements of behaviors. So that becomes really important for us. So these are the things that we're trying to integrate in our product extensively. And of course, this requires a lot of research, understanding behaviors of people, interacting with them, and actually observing things that are happening around us. So that's the objective and the approach that we're taking with our product.
Okay, great. So thanks, Sankalp, Mohit and Nitin, for your time today. It was really lovely talking to you as always. Hope our listeners enjoy this as well. Have a great 2023 and keep building towards 2030 and beyond.
Thank you for listening to That One Idea, a podcast series produced by WaterBridge Ventures, recorded at our studio office in Bangalore. WaterBridge Ventures is a leading early-stage VC fund in India, partnering with mission-oriented founders building game-changing businesses. The fund invests up to $3 million across seed to Series A rounds. With over 32 investments in 5 years, WaterBridge has backed leading companies like Magic Pin, Unacademy, Doubtnut, Chalo, and City Mall, among many others. With over $250 million in assets under management, WaterBridge also runs India's leading seed investment program called Fast Forward. The Fast Forward program invests up to $1 million in seed stage companies with a 7-day turnaround time to all founder pitches. Head to waterbridge.vc to learn more.